boardroom. This is the business of esports. The worlds of gaming and esports are evolving every day faster than ever before. With YouGov's living data, you can probe into the real thoughts and behaviors of esports fans and gamers worldwide. If you're a team, a brand, an agency, or a rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. They're partners with the biggest names in esports and the biggest brands all around the world, driving compelling results every single day. Check out yougov.com/BOE and schedule a call with YouGov today.
From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports weekly news show / post-podcast live stream. I am Paul the Prophet Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, Lindsay the Boss Poss, Jeff the Juice Cohen. For those of you who are new here, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. And best of all, with the live stream, we get to do it live with you guys. You get to get in our faces, challenge us, question us, participate. We encourage it. It's a safe space. We know so many of you lurk, but we really appreciate it. When you get involved, it makes it so much more fun for everybody. So bring your family, bring your friends, bring your colleagues. Get the whole family around the computer. And let's talk the business of gaming. Lindsay, how you doing this week? Jeff, how you doing this week?
I'll go first, as is tradition.
As is tradition.
It is hot as hell outside in DC, so I have been holed up in my house, letting my dog out in very short 30-second bursts as she hates it, and just trying to stay cool.
Really? I didn't realize it was so hot down there right now. I mean, it's
95,
it's actually like,
baby.
It's actually like cold in New Jersey. It was like 50 or 60 degrees today. So
rub it
surprised.
in.
I was gonna say it's
doing,
just
Jeff?
you and I tonight. I mean, this is like the first time in a long time there's no buffer. Like this could get ugly. Like
it's true.
I think this should
just do this. Hold on. Maybe this should just be like this, right? Like
I think the whole theme should just be we have to disagree. We just have to disagree with one another on every topic. On a debate show.
Oh man.
On everything.
I'll do my best, but you're better at disagreeing with me than I am with you.
Well, I agree with you on that.
Off to a great start.
Off to a horrible start. Let's make it the whole theme of this show. You guys have to disagree. Adam says DC is so hot, but happy Wednesday, Adam. Great to see you. Happy Wednesday to you. I will say, guys, I do have a little story anecdote for this week. I was at the airport, and as I was going through security, I got through security. Some guy pulled me to the side, like literally grabbed me, said my name, grabbed me, and I didn't recognize who it was. And he's like, "Hold on, you're the esports guy, right?" Like randomly, Newark Airport. And I was like, "Yes, I am the esports guy." And so thank you to everyone who watches this and who maybe sees Lindsay or Jeff or myself. If you listen to this, if you watch this and you recognize this, don't hesitate. It's always fun. It's always flattering. We love that you guys enjoy the show. And I was just to that person, you know who you are. Thank you so much for stopping and saying hello and telling me you love the show. So, guys, we got so much news to talk about. Where do we start? Where do we start is the question. There's a lot going on. I wanted to start with an article here about MMOs, and this one, we've talked about MMOs and we've talked about licensing big IP, and I think there's an interesting sort of intersection of the two here. And the headline, hang on, let me share my screen here. The headline is about the Marvel MMO project. Can you guys see this? Sorry. I don't know why this is not. Oh, here we go. The Marvel MMO project at Daybreak Games has been canceled. So this is the big game from the makers of DC Universe Online. Was only revealed last year and announced today that all the resources and the money they've poured into this are going to be spread across a whole bunch of other projects, smaller projects, but that this MMO, the Marvel MMO, is not going to see the light of day. It was revealed in an investor presentation in late 2021, and they didn't expect to reveal any more about it until 2023 at the soonest, but now it's been killed. I will just read the statement. It said, based on the reevaluation of the development risk profile, size of investment, and the long-term product portfolio strategy for the group, the board has decided to change the development priorities and reallocate resources within the group to focus on alternative long-term projects. It's taking a write-down of about $23 million as a result of the cancellation, and they've made no comment about potential layoffs or anything like that. Now, question for you guys. You have major IP here, right? Marvel, and you have a genre that technically, again, I believe MMOs are the ultimate gaming genre. You would think, the WoW is 15 years old. If you could make a great MMO with great IP like Marvel IP and characters that people want to play, this should have been a home run. Why kill this? What are the theories, guys? And what do you make of this story?
Yeah, it's surprising. I mean, superhero games seem like they should do really well, but particularly with Marvel, they just kind of haven't. I think we saw, with Crystal Dynamics, the Avengers game kind of flopped. There was a few others that have flopped. I'm not entirely sure why. Like, again, it makes all the sense in the world, because of what you just said, that they should do well. Having said that, I can't necessarily blame the board of this company from moving from, trying to build one giant game, like having one shot on goal, basically, where you put all your eggs in one basket, to more of a diversified portfolio approach. It's a bit different from the approach we've seen in gaming the last, call it 10 years, where every studio seem to have moved away from making a ton of different bets towards, hey, let's make one game to rule them all, where we're going to try to become, the Destiny where people are going to sink their whole life into. But I do think in the world as we live in today, like, there's just a finite amount of attention that people have, where like everyone can't play every game all the time. So I actually like the idea of creating like smaller sort of like shots, like kind of like snackable shots on goal, where like one of these will probably take off. And as we think about the world moving towards more of a Game Pass model, like I think that actually will probably be more common than we've seen in the past.
I mean, Jeff, that's maybe the most depressing thing I've ever heard. Isn't this sort of what I called literally probably 2 years ago, that we may be seeing the end of great immersive experiences, right? Like games that draw you in for thousands of hours. Like, isn't this, I guess,
as a game, wouldn't you think
is happening?
So wouldn't you be almost positive about this? Because I think we've lamented many times on this, podcast about how all these studios just remake the same game. They all try to make a live service. They're all trying to be, your Call of Duty, your Destiny, like your, one game to rule them all that you're going to sink thousands of hours into. Like, I like the idea. I'm not saying these games have to be bad. I'm just saying there's something great about, let's build a 25-hour, like, just good game that doesn't have to live on as a live service and have microtransactions and online gameplay for years and years. It could just be like a good game that people play for a month and then never think about again. Like that, I don't know, that to me is not actually a bad thing.
But what you're saying essentially says we'll never get the next WoW. Lindsay, please cheer me up here.
I can see some points in what Jeff's saying, but I just think it's going to take an extra special mix of luck and skill to actually make that happen. And I don't think that Marvel was the answer to this, mostly because I think that IP, because of the structure of the movies, because there's been 27 of them, it's not that I don't think you could translate
really
into any
been 27? Really been 27 movies?
Yeah, plus TV shows, all this other stuff. Like, there's already such a lore that's accessible in a completely different way than a game. I just don't. There's nothing super compelling to me about an MMO. Like, you don't need to learn the world. You can just go watch the movies. And I do think that historically, because of that, the Marvel franchise has really struggled to adapt. I think that's kind of true of quite a number of film franchises. Not all of them, and it seems to be that book-based games and films do better than just straight up IP. Even though I know it's comic books with slightly different medium. That's like total just quick judgment. I don't know if that's actually true. But anyways, the point is that it's such a developed lore. I don't think it translates well into an MMO. I am super surprised that a lot of their mobile games have flopped. And I've been surprised that there's been kind of no translation into gaming whatsoever in a successful way. I don't know what the special sauce is going to be for that, for Marvel. But I certainly think that they should keep trying because it's an entertaining IP. You would think that something good could happen.
Do you guys think that being an MMO was the problem here? That and I think we've talked about this before, but like a superhero, you can't have 12,000 Iron Mans like flying around in this world. It doesn't feel right? Whereas if you're a generic, elf or dwarf or whatever, in World of Warcraft, if you have 100 of them, no one says anything. But like, you can't play the superhero in these MMOs. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, right? It stops making sense. Do you think this is part of the problem? It's maybe just the superhero genre? And second question, theories on why they killed this. Like, what was the conversation in that boardroom?
To answer the first part, I think superheroes don't fit naturally with an MMO in a way that, like, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I think you could make it work, but I don't know why you would try to force something into that box when you could just go with a different gameplay style that would be more appropriate.
Jeff?
Yeah, in terms of why they killed it, to some extent, you almost have to be impressed is maybe not the right word, but I think it shows a good amount of capital discipline from the board to not, many times when you've announced a project, particularly as a public company, you want to follow through with it. You don't want to kill something that's going to hurt your stock price or going to, affect company morale negatively. So you end up falling victim to the sunk cost fallacy where you just keep digging and, thinking, hey, if we just finish this, it'll be worth it. So I respect that they had the discipline to obviously do analysis and say, hey, look, regardless of what we've spent in the past, this project is not going to be positive for us in terms of value. So they've decided to shelve it. In terms of what they were analyzing, like, I don't know what would make your forecast change. Maybe they had some gate posts in the development where it's like they did some play testing, and based on where it wasn't seeing the metrics that they had expected, or the reviews, kind of like the feedback was just so negative that it would have cost so much more to rebuild it that it then wouldn't have been profitable. So it was just better to shut it down. But it's a surprising decision because these things are massive business development challenges, right? Like, they had to go out and sign this license. Like, I'm sure that was a large undertaking. They announced it to the market. That was clearly important to them. So you don't make these kind of decisions lightly, obviously.
I just want to read these comments. Rudy says, good session. Rudy, great to have you here. Tom says, Batman and crowd seems to translate well into Arkham /Gotham Knights. Not huge, but better than Marvel. But the problem is those are single player games, right? Like it's the fact that not everyone can play Batman is the problem with anything multiplayer or massive, especially massively multiplayer. So we'll see. I guys, the thing that keeps me up at night, I lose sleep over more than anything, is the future of the MMO genre. Like, I'm waiting for the thing that the next WoW. In the same way, the people waiting for the aliens to come. For me, that's the next WoW.
Remember when you said that was New World? TBT.
Pull the tapes.
Yeah.
That was Amazon's fault. Amazon messed that up.
WoW is dead.
WoW is dead. New World's here to stay.
All right, guys. All right. Let's talk about things in trouble. Let's stick with that theme for a second here. But first, actually, Hardware Barbecue says, hey, I hope you're all doing good at your end. Hardware Barbecue, We're doing great. Now that
we love you, Hardware Barbecue.
Let's talk about Faze Clan, and this was interesting. Faze Clan in the news because they put out an update 3 or 4 days ago, I think on May 27th, where the CEO Lee Trink updated stakeholders on the plan to go public. So it was supposed to go public. It was supposed to be completed the first quarter of 2022. They failed to complete the transaction in time. Now they filed multiple amendments with the SEC and a letter on May 27th to give this update. Now, in this letter, Lee Trink, who's the CEO of Faze Clan, shared, first of all, that CFO Amit Bajaj resigned due to personal reasons and that the position will be left vacant for the time being, at least. And additionally, Trink revealed that Citigroup, the investment bank that was advising Faze on the merger, has resigned in their role. He did say the bank's advisory role is largely complete, and we believe the bank's resignation will not slow down our entry into the public market, and we do not expect to hire another financial advisor in connection with the de-SPAC. So, CFO resigning, Citigroup resigning. Now they're saying they expect this to be completed by July, and according to the deal's terms, it has to be completed by July 25th, or the deal is basically dead. They're going to have a shareholder vote. There's a bunch of details in here. Not as relevant, but Trink closed the letter saying, there's a lot of noise about where we are as a company, but I reassure you that we are on a great trajectory. How do you guys feel about Lee Trink's and enthusiasm here around Faze's SPAC merger, essentially IPO? Jeff?
Man, it's like this is almost becoming a recurring segment. I mean, none of these things are good. Even taken on their own, they're not good, right? The CFO leaving right before you get public is really always a very, very bad sign. And maybe, it says for personal reasons. Who knows? There could be some circumstances that we're not aware of. But take it at face value, that's really bad. Oftentimes, you would think you'd want to stay. There's usually some vesting when things go public. You'd sell your stock. So, that is a massive red flag. Citigroup, then your investment bank, effectively quitting is arguably even maybe more of a red flag because they've already done.
They're getting paid.
Now they've quit before they probably get paid. They probably get paid some portion of it, but they're quitting before the deal is done. I can't even think of a bigger red flag. And then also in this filing, this was around their quarterly results, and I think they said they did 16 million in revenue. And in the shareholder letter, he said something like, a lot of people on the outside are going to compare this, to our previous sort of forecasts, which I looked for and I couldn't find for the quarter, but they had projected to do 90 million for the year. So, their run rate is clearly a little off, which, to be fair, that's probably back half weighted and there's growth every quarter. So I don't know exactly how big of a miss it was, but it was definitely a miss based on what he said in the letter. So obviously not great. Frankly, they just picked the worst possible time to try to do this. They caught the tail end of the SPAC mania. If we were having this conversation exactly a year ago, everyone would be salivating over when this went public. The stock would probably go up 60, 70% day one. And it would be, all the apes on Reddit would be going crazy over this because Snoop Dogg would tweet a picture of a mirror or something like that. And it would go to 1 million because of that. It's just a different world this year than it was, last year. So what do I think happens? I think the company will still get public. I think the deal will get done. I think it will probably get done at probably 40% low. Either they will lower the price prior to the deal getting done, or the stock will probably go down 40, 50% in the first 2 or 3 months. And then that's reasonable. Faze Clan is a legitimate org. They're losing money, but they have a business, right? They're going to generate $100 million roughly in revenue over the next, call it 2 years. It should probably be a $400 or $500 million market cap. They have something there. It's just not $1 billion business. Not yet.
Lindsay, break down the psychology of his last. I wanted you guys to comment on that last flourish at the end of his letter, right? That there's a lot of noise, but he reassures us they're on a great trajectory. Do you think that's fair? That's a fair evaluation of the situation?
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with Jeff more. I am buying this stock on day one. I am diamond handing it to the moon. No, I'm just kidding. None of this bodes
I was
well.
really hoping you were not kidding. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, I really wanted you to run with that. Diamond hands.
I know. I reached all my Wall Street bets lingo in the first 10 seconds. Anyways, no, that last sentence actually kind of made me giggle because it's the thing that made me believe in it the least, I guess. I say this as someone I've said this before and I'll say it again. I would be happy to be proven wrong about this. I hope that they're a successful company. I think any esports org that can figure out a monetization structure and stick with it is just doing good things for the industry. I have no qualms with Faze, anything of that nature. When you say like, oh yeah, our CFO resigned and Citigroup backed out of the deal, and then you're like, but this is just noise. It's like, that's not just noise. Like it would have been more honest to say something like, it's been a tough road to get where we are, but we're so excited about the future. I don't know, something like I just felt like it completely calling all of that noise just felt really disingenuous to me. And really like just downplayed the situation in a way where it was like, okay, this whole letter is so self-serving, you know? And you know that those types of things are self-serving because they have to be. That's the point of them. But like seeing it thrown in your face is a little odd to me. It's like, okay, so there's just no accountability. People are resigning, Citigroup's leaving, and you're just like, nah, it's just noise. It's like, I don't know.
It's true. Calling it noise is a little.
It does feel like
brushing
he's
it up.
probably. I think he's probably lost Wall Street already in the sense, you know, similar to how I think Skills, you know, their management team has just completely lost Wall Street. It's like you do see this very often, particularly, you know, it happens a lot in the gaming, media, like entertainment space too. Like as soon as Wall Street kind of gets the sense that you're not an operator, you're not executing, and maybe you're not spending capital wisely, or you say one thing and then the results are the other. I just think for whatever reason in this sector, like they just tune you out immediately. Maybe it's the whole hit-driven nature. Yeah, I mean, it just feels like very swift, and so I worry that, you know, he may not last in that role if they are to continue on the public journey.
Yeah, the diehards double down.
Says, no, there's love, Jeff, for between you and Hardware Barbecue, clearly. And Hardware Barbecue says, yes, humans of Reddit. These are the influencers of our time, right? These are the tastemakers of our time, I think, the humans of Reddit. All right, guys, let's talk about Activision Blizzard. We're on a roll here. You know, we did Marvel, Faze. We got to cover Activision Blizzard. And this one, big number in this story, big number in this headline. Activision Blizzard owed up to $420 million by esports teams. Activision Blizzard is owed $420 million by esports franchises. The company suspended fees during the pandemic. When you dig into this article, they mentioned Call of Duty League teams owe an average of $22.5 million. Now, the cost of admission into that league is $25 million reportedly. So teams have only paid 10% essentially of their entry fee, with the 90% being deferred. 20 Overwatch League franchises owe around $6 to $7.5 million each, and the price for entry in that league was $16 million on average, with teams having chipped in $7.5 to $10 million already. So lots of money being owed to Activision Blizzard from these teams, and essentially they've suspended these fees. I'm curious, how do you guys think this plays out? Does Activision Blizzard come to collect at some point? Do you think they have a moment where they realize, or do you think they have a moment where they realize, look, we probably charged too much. We'll just keep suspending this forever to hope that the league stays together and the teams stay solvent? Like, where do you guys think this? Fast forward
Lindsay,
a year from now,
you can go
what
first
happened to this? Yeah, Lindsay, go ahead.
This is exactly analogous to the student loan crisis once again. I'm out there with the Call of Duty leagues, also dodging my student loan payments, so I understand. No, I do think the league, I mean, obviously Activision Blizzard has difficulties in organizing professional leagues, to put it mildly. And so I do think that the price tag for this is a little high, especially considering not that it would have been easy to manage this through the pandemic, but there obviously was a chance for particularly online games and matches to be played, especially when professional sports were suspended. You would have expected some type of consistency or revenue generation or interest generation or something from that time. I don't think that the teams are seeing that in the way that they anticipated with the 25 million buy-in. And now I think it's just kind of it's just like student loans. It's like a standoff. Like, I'll start them again, but I don't want to, and you don't want them, and nobody wants to do this, and we're just all going to keep not thinking about it.
Do you think that they will forgive the debt?
I think it kind of depends on revenue generation, and they did just get bought for 70 billion. So this is kind of, not that it's small potatoes, because it's not, but I also don't know that the league is panning out in the ways that they promised. I just think I think it's bad blood both ways. I think it's bad to sign on to something that doesn't have a great structure and agree to pay 25 million. And I think it's bad to charge 25 million for something that doesn't have a great structure. So I don't know who's going to be the first to bend. Maybe if there's some crazy revenue generation, the owners will be more likely to, but as it stands now, I don't see them going after it.
Well, they've bent a lot, right? When you say first to bend, we're years into some of these leagues, right? The fact that all the
bend back the other way though and charge them. Yeah.
Jeff, your thoughts on this?
I definitely agree with Lindsay. I think particularly with Microsoft acquiring Activision, the pockets for Microsoft are so deep. I feel like we talk about it so often that almost sometimes it's too much. Like, I don't necessarily even agree with it, but we always say, oh, well, Microsoft doesn't even need to make money in gaming. Like, they're okay with Game Pass because it's not a core part of the Microsoft business. So they're fine losing money, which I take a little bit of, umbrage to that. But I think in this instance, they will probably view the greater good in terms of needing to continue to build the esports community, and they'll view it as a marketing expense. I don't know that they'll ever very immediately quickly say, hey, thanks owners, you're good. You don't have to pay it off. It's forgiven. But it may be something where they start taking a very small percentage of revenues over a number of years. Assuming these leagues are going to be around for the long term, which if they're not, the league's not going to exist, and then these debts will be forgiven anyway. But I think they will do it that way, where they'll inflict the least amount of pain. Because you have to remember, these people, are very influential people. They're mostly billionaires, sports team owners, not necessarily the kind of people that you really want to piss off. Not that, if you're Microsoft or something like that, you don't really care, but at the same time, you do care, right? Like, if you're, Phil Spencer, Satya Nadella, it's just it's not something you want to do, having these people who are influential people, no politicians, it's just not something you want to do over a number that I don't think is that material to your investors. Maybe that's my tinfoil hat theory of the day, but
no, I think it's a good theory. It's, if they keep delaying the payments though, what does that do to the value of that slot, right? At some point people go, well, it's not really worth 25 million. And if you ever get to the point where you want to expand the league, which maybe is a pipe dream at this point, you definitely can't keep charging 25 million if, they've been delaying payments for 4 years to the people who got in the first place.
Which, to be fair, I don't think they are. I don't think, the newer Call of Duty League teams have gone, for nearly the same amount.
Yeah.
At least up front.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. I don't think they're going to forgive the debt, but I definitely think they are concerned about the viability of the league and will not break down the door to collect, right? There's no one showing up at the team's doors with a baseball bat asking for the rest of the money anytime soon. So, but also just very telling in terms of the viability of these leagues when you have to suspend getting paid to make the league viable. Something has broken down in that chain, and I think, Lindsay, you touched on that. So we mentioned Microsoft in this, and there's a story about Microsoft, guys, that I think was interesting this week. And the headline here, Project Keystone is Microsoft's affordable Xbox cloud gaming streaming stick. Oh, that's a mouthful. It says, but don't expect it anytime soon. So Microsoft confirmed they're working on a streaming device capable of streaming Xbox games through the cloud. It'll be like a dongle-style device. It's meant to be an easy and affordable option for people that want to play and access games on Xbox Cloud Gaming. Now, the idea would be to connect it to any TV or monitor without the need for a console. Interesting, right? Given the success of Game Pass. Question for you guys. How is this different from Stadia, really? I mean, doesn't this sound kind of like Stadia? Sort of, a little bit?
Well, it's different from Stadia in the sense that it actually has Xbox behind it and like in content. And so people will develop for it and it will have games when it comes out. But it is very similar to Stadia. And I think, I mean, maybe you just poisoned my brain there by mentioning Stadia, but I'm very bullish on this. Like, this seems to me like, and I think you even actually had mentioned this as the future a few weeks ago, where it's like, this feels like this is in 10 years how we're going to be gaming, where it's going to be like an Apple TV type device or like a Roku or something, you know, Chromecast, Fire Stick. They're all the same thing basically, but it will be some little tiny plug-in that you put into your TV, or even just an app that you download, and then it'll stream through the cloud. Like, to me, that feels very much like where this is all heading.
Yeah, I think the comment they made though, Jeff, was hardware goes away, right? Including this. Like, I think people that you either have high-end PCs or you have everyone else playing on existing hardware, whether it's your phone, your iPad, your Chromecast. I wouldn't
call this hardware if it's like a little dongle.
It's still some hardware they're developing. Hardware Barbecue says, Hardware Barbecue, this is the perfect topic for you. We're talking about hardware. I think the proper comparison would be with NVIDIA. Except NVIDIA doesn't sell, a dongle or a piece of hardware that you have to buy to do this, right? Like, I'm pretty sure NVIDIA works on other devices, including their own Shield device. But yeah. Wenji Lee says, why would you not just use your Fire Stick /Roku/Chromecast? Lindsay, why would you not just use your Fire Stick?
That was my first thought. I actually thought more about how the Fire Stick has become slightly more useless in the age of smart TVs, and how everyone eventually would just be playing on the device that they own, just as you were saying that. But it would be interesting to see in the era before things like Rokus and Chromecasts. I mean, we're not at a point where those are completely out yet, especially for older TVs, and this reads more like a console thing to me than a PC thing. It might be a type of product that people also just plug into their TV to be able to play. I don't know. That's actually a good question. Do you all see this more on, I mean, you see this as a TV product, right? Not
TV, yeah.
It's what makes the most sense.
Yeah.
And I guess I get a little bit like maybe the portability, right? You put this in a backpack with a controller. You're at a hotel room, you plug it into the TV, and you can play all your Xbox games on the TV, whatever. I sort of get the use case. Again, I'm not sure about the fit between the target. Like, is this casual gamers? Is this more hardcore gamers? I'm not clear who this is going after. I'm not clear who this is going after. But I still believe, and Lindsay, you mentioned this, the hardware gets disintermediated very quickly. And it's sort of Wenji Lee's point and your point. You already have a Fire Stick. You already have a Roku. You already have a Chromecast. You already probably have a smart TV. You probably have like all these other devices are perfectly capable of doing everything this can do. I'm not sure I understand the need for a dedicated Xbox branded device. I don't know. Jeff?
I think it's maybe an intermediary step. I mean, I don't view the device as something like,
do they sell more Game Passes because of this? Because they bundle it with something physical? Do you think that makes Game Pass more palatable as an offering?
How would that be different if it's a download on your TV that you need to have? Like,
no, but meaning
just because you're buying
when people
something?
Like, it's always like the grandmother kind of use case, right? If I try to sell my grandmother on Xbox Game Pass, it's a little bit nebulous. You're not sure what you're actually buying, right? Versus you put it with a little dongle and a controller, and now it seems like you're buying something. You're buying a gaming system.
I could buy that. I mean, I see your point about the grandma test. over time, like I think if you can make it not have hardware, it will be better for you in terms of like gross profit dollars versus like the incremental few grandmas you're going to get to buy it, like because they see it in the store. But I think it's more like they need the hardware now. If they didn't need the hardware, I don't think they would do it just to get the incremental sales.
I don't know. Look, if this works fantastically, if it's fabulously successful, it proves how inept Google was with Google Stadia, right? It proves that they completely, because it's basically the same thing with content. I get it; it's a little bit different. But if it fails, it proves that you should not be trying to follow in Google's footsteps on anything gaming related. Hardware Barbecue says deployment-wise, yeah, I understand. I mean, it is a service very similar to NVIDIA's. Han says, "Good morning from Singapore." Good morning.
Hello, Han.
Welcome.
Good morning.
All right, guys. We talked about Microsoft. Sorry, you saw the next story. I wanted to put it back to back with a Sony story here. And the headline here, Sony made $2 billion from these 5 free-to-play PS4 games. For chat and for you guys, can you guys guess what are any of them? I'm going to hide this for a second.
Are these games that are first party or are these games that are third party? Like, are they Sony IP or not Sony IP? Okay. Apex Legends, Fortnite, Hardware Barbecue's onto something. Yeah. Call of Duty. Well, Call of Duty, I guess, isn't free to play. Would Warzone count?
Yeah, Warzone counts.
Warzone.
Rocket League? No, that wouldn't be $1 billion.
Okay.
I can't even remember.
You guys are good. You got most of them.
What's the last one we're missing? We have to be missing.
You're missing one. You guys got them all except one.
What are we missing?
I don't know. I can't. The 3 I thought of were Fortnite, Apex, and Call of Duty. Is it F?
What's the one?
Oh, PUBG.
PUBG.
Yeah.
When she says Fortnite, Apex, PUBG, Genshin Impact, okay.
Ooh, Genshin
Hardware
Impact.
Barbecue says, "I'd be shocked if you said Rust." I can
don't
promise
think
you,
it's
Hardware
Rust.
Barbecue. Rust.
Valheim. It's Valheim.
Let me put them up here so you guys can see. The 5 games, $2 billion of spend to Sony. Fortnite, Genshin Impact, Call of Duty Warzone, Apex Legends, and Rocket League. Those are the 5 that in the last made $2 billion in PlayStation Store revenue from just those 5 games. So I'm just curious. It's a big number, guys. Are you surprised that none of these, because none of them are Sony exclusive? Does that, and Jeff, you beat me to it right when you asked me up front. This was going to be my take on it. Are you surprised that none of them are?
Well, Sony doesn't have a strong history with live service games. I mean, that's part of why they bought Bungie, was to bring in more of that kind of live service, I guess, free to play type model. So maybe in the future we do get like a big Sony live service game, but I don't think it's necessarily like it's more of like a feature than a bug. Like, this is the console model, right? And Sony's done it perfectly. You sell the console basically at cost or at a loss. You put out really great single-party games that people that are exclusive to your console, so gamers have to buy your console, and then you get all the third-party titles because you have the biggest install base, and that's where you make all your, a ton of your money, because every microtransaction you're taking 30% right off the top. So, I guess I'm not surprised, but that is the business model. That's why, and it's a good business. So, are you surprised?
I mean, the question then becomes, with the acquisition of Bungie, and I believe it. You're right that part of it was they wanted to get better at live service games. Do you think this model ever shifts for Sony, or is this just their business going forward for the foreseeable future? Do you think Bungie has a material impact when you see numbers like this? Right, 5 games make up 25% of all the PS4 revenue.
That is crazy. No, I don't think Bungie will have a material impact, because I just think that Destiny is not like that big of a game. It's not like wildly mainstream game. I mean, it will, now that they own all the revenue, maybe it's $500 million total. Maybe if they grow it, I don't even think it was that much, the last couple of years. So I don't think Bungie will be like the be all end all for Sony. I'd be curious. I mean, Microsoft's probably the same thing. I bet if you had this exact same statistic for Microsoft, like, would it be any different? It's not like they own a bunch of free to play live service games themselves.
True.
That's what I was going to say.
Lindsay.
Is it speaks more to the efficacy of free to play live service games than it does, I think, to the power of PS4 or Sony. Because I think the other thing that's super important to note here is that it is cross-platform. So I don't know that developing these live service games in-house is going to be as successful if they're not also cross-platform. And I think that's part of the reason why the third-party developers have had more success with this model. So hopefully they keep thinking about it as an open ecosystem. Otherwise, I'm not sure how it'll actually go with their own live services.
Wenji, by the way, guys, Wenji came super close, got 4 out of 5, and Harder Barbecue got a good number of them as well. So Wenji says, Genshin Impact. Anyone I know who's played has spent way more than they expected on the gacha game. Incredible business, it sounds like. I mean, that's basically the whole point of that game is to extract money from you. Plus, I think the fact that you can play how incredibly multi-platform it is, right? Everywhere from your iPad right up to your high-end gaming PC.
It was the highest grossing mobile game in 2020.
Yeah.
So I was surprised to see it in the top 5 for PS4 as well.
I mean, but it also proves how wide of an audience it has, because the person who plays on mobile is very different from the person who plays on PC for the most part. Wenji says, do we know how much Sony takes versus Apple Store versus Android Store versus Steam versus Xbox on their microtransaction? I.e., there's a lot of disclosures out of the Epic lawsuit, but you can see why if they can get better percentages, they're trying to fight for it. Being stuck with a monopoly is a toughie, I imagine. Give 30% of my margin versus no revenue on a platform. Do either of you guys know Sony Store's cut?
I thought it was 30%.
Yeah, I thought it was basically 30% across the board.
I know Epic and Steam now have different schemes where, like, the first million, it's a smaller cut, and then it ramps up to a larger, like, they want to sort of help smaller developers, and they take a smaller cut. But 30%, I think, has been, I mean, Apple has set the sort of the benchmark there, and everyone just follows suit for the most part. But yeah, I mean, you can see why game developers want to fight these, call it monopolies, and give away smaller percentage. I just think, and this is a whole rabbit hole I don't want to go down. The reality is they get tons of distribution from these platforms, being on Steam or Sony Store or Android Store or Apple Store. This is how you get your game out to the world. And I don't think you can just, that's not free. That kind of distribution is not free. Harder Barbecue says, interestingly, I've noticed that people who play Genshin Impact religiously since day one shifted to other games. Harder Barbecue, I'm curious why you think that is. Although I will get to a story, it might be in our lightning round, but I am going to get to a story talking about the most played games of Q1 of this year. And so first thing to think about, what are those top 10 most played games in the first quarter of this year? I can tell you Genshin Impact's not in that top 10, interestingly enough. So very good at monetizing, because clearly they're extracting a lot of dollars per player, despite maybe not being the most played. Harder Barbecue says Elden Ring most likely. Harder Barbecue, I think you're going to find that interesting. I'm going to get to that story in a few minutes here. Let's talk about France, guys. France in the news. France officially bans English gaming terms like esports and streaming. So streamer is now un joueur en direct, and esports is un jeu vidéo de compétition. So the country, France, they don't like that English jargon is invading their language, and the language purists and the politicians there have banned terms like streamer, cloud gaming, esports, etc. So the language keepers of the French language, l'Académie Française, they've expressed concern. They've now blocked these terms. we've talked about countries forward thinking in terms of gaming and tech. Do you guys think this is going to help, hurt? None of the above, just a silly story about words. Lindsay,
I
what do
think
make of France?
you specifically chose this story so that you could remind everyone that French is your first language and do all your fancy French pronunciations. And I don't think this is an important story.
Francois.
But I'm happy for you, Paul, specifically.
Okay. We talk about esports, guys. We've talked on the show, on the main podcast, a million times, especially in the early days, about esports as a term. Some people hated it, some people liked it, some people thought it doesn't come around. At this point, do the words matter at all to the business of it? Like, if we have the same conversation with metaverse, right? Which, by the way, go subscribe to the Meta Business podcast.
But
Jeff?
why
Lindsay?
would they do this?
Yeah, I don't know enough about the French, like the translation of each of these words to comment. I also now work for a French company, so I will say that I love France and the culture and all the people there. And I'm actually going to Paris in a few weeks, so I'm excited for that. But yeah, in terms of this, I don't know enough to necessarily comment. Besides the fact that they've spelled esports wrong in this article. I don't like when they capitalize the S.
This is true. It does make it ugly. Harder Barbecue says, I just say omelette du fromage. That's all I need to say. I mean, Harder Barbecue, that's the most important thing, ordering food. But they should have chosen a significantly smaller term, like a word, something like streamer, or I guess whatever.
This segment is just Paul showing off his French accent.
Here. Harder Barbecue says, I do have a French pun when it comes to gaming. Works every time. Harder Barbecue, then we have to ask, what is the French pun that works every time? Now I'm curious. And while we're doing that, guys, we have this podcast, this live stream, this weekly news show, very generously sponsored by YouGov. YouGov produces the absolute best data on games, gamers, esports fans all around the world. If you're a team, if you're a brand, if you're anyone looking at the esports and gaming space, if you're looking to reach gamers as an audience, maybe you're a marketing person working at a brand, if you're looking to tap into this, you need to go in with really actionable data. You can't go it alone. And YouGov produces what they call live data. It's data that is constantly being updated. It's constantly changing, and it allows you to make really actionable decisions, and you're informed, and you will do far better entering the gaming space with a partner like YouGov. So definitely go check them out. I will put a link in the chat. Go show them some love. It's there's some good free content there that we've produced in conjunction with them, specifically a video about the intersection of gaming and crypto. So go check that out, yougov.com/BOE. Click on the link. There's a bunch of other things there. And if you want to reach out to YouGov, or you want to contact there, you can reach out to me, to Lindsay, to Jeff. All of us can put you in direct contact with the right people at YouGov. We thank them for their tremendous support of this live stream. Go check them out, yougov.com/BOE. All right, guys. I want to move on. I want to get Hardware Barbecue's French pun here. He says, did you know Nintendo is the national gaming console of France? I did not know that, Hardware Barbecue.
Is that the pun, or is that we?
Wow. I don't have my soundboard. I don't have the
wow.
Wah.
And he timed that out perfectly. Oh my god. Because I was wondering. Wow.
You should use that. You have to use that on your French colleagues when you go to Paris in a couple
I
weeks.
should. That actually could.
Yeah,
that could
you
land.
should.
That may land. That may land.
That may land.
Just make sure you give Hardware Barbecue credit.
I want to get to everyone's favorite new segment, our lightning round. Here we go. All right, guys, the way this works, we've got a handful of shorter stories. I'm going to present the news. Lindsay and Jeff are going to give their very quick take. They have 30 seconds. I don't have my bell, unfortunately, so I'm going to just make a noise when the 30 seconds is up and interrupt very rudely. but we want your take as well. So if you have a thought on the story, try and get it in. I will use my 30 seconds to mention your take also. So 30 seconds. We keep it short and sweet in the lightning round. The first story here, guys, it's Epic in the news. Epic returns to in-person Fortnite competition with a November event. The FNCS Invitational 2022 takes place November 12th and 13th. It will have a $1 million prize pool. It's going to be at the Raleigh Convention Center in North Carolina. So this is Fortnite coming back to in-person esports. Lindsay, too little, too late. What's your take?
So I live in a household where not a lot of Fortnite is played, but every single Fortnite World Cup and other thing is watched religiously. So I am all for this. There is some audience out there who loves it, and that's for that audience.
Jeff?
I mean, first thing to note is the prize pool going down from 30 million to 1 million. So, that's notable. Paul, I think you've famously said Fortnite esports is dead. I generally agree with you, but I will say they do well with these one-off type events. So I think this will garner some interest, and I'm glad that they're doing it for the space.
Adam says, love it, even though I do not play Fortnite. Adam, I'd love to know what you love about it, because I don't really get it, right? You can watch a bunch of Fortnite streamers if you want to get the entertainment that way. I don't understand why Epic would be doing this. They know Fortnite esports are not going to come back in a big way. The prize pool's too small. Interest has gone away. This feels like, I'm not sure. This feels like lip service a little bit. I don't know why they're doing it. But Adam, I'm curious why you love it. That would be interesting to me.
I bet, right, just to quickly before we go, I bet they get some sort of, they probably have some data when they run these events. They get some spike in microtransactions and engagement in the game. And based on what we just said around, the billions and billions of live service revenue, it's not that hard to conceive that they can get an extra $1 million or so of incremental revenue, very easily.
So. Very possible. That is an interesting theory. Guys, GAMERJI, this is the next story. GAMERJI, India's esports platform, launches in the Middle East. One of India's leading esports platforms, now available in the UAE and Saudi Arabia, plans to expand into more MENA territories over the next 3 months. They have 3 million users in India. They conduct 300 tournaments daily, and they're looking towards the Middle East to grow the platform, enable cross-border tournaments. They think they're going to have around 250,000 people playing and paying users in the region. They host 4 games: PUBG Mobile, FIFA 22, Call of Duty Mobile, and Clash Royale. Look, I brought this story because I thought an Indian company moving into the Middle East with a big tournament platform and number 250,000, their expectation, I thought was interesting. Guys, what do you make of this? Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, we're clearly very bullish on the region. I mean, 250,000 seems, I guess, reasonable. Particularly, definitely if you're talking about over India and the Middle East, paying users 250,000 over time, I think is a very achievable goal. I'm interested that it's an Indian company moving over. Usually, we see these platforms struggle when they try to move across regions. Like even Twitch has struggled in areas like China and Southeast Asia, and you see a lot of these regional kind of behemoths come up. So I'm curious if there's kind of a specific platform that's tailored more to the Middle East that maybe will compete with this company. But yeah, I'm positive on it.
Lindsay?
There's 3 things I think of. One, the Indian government is really stringent with outside companies, particularly ones that come from China. So I'm not surprised that this started off as a homegrown business. And given that it's the second most populous country in the world, it is one where there's plenty of people to actually use this service. The second is that it makes sense to expand into the Middle East since the offerings there are slim and it's geographically it's close by. And there tends to be some different ties and whatnot there that, again, the government will be more friendly towards a product from there, which I think it makes sense. And third, I think they're balancing both of those things well in terms of users and investment. They're going after an area that has a high amount of users, and then they're moving into an area that has a high amount of potential for investment. So I think the strategy makes sense.
Agree wholeheartedly, Lindsay. Yeah, look, the 250,000 number is what they think they're going to get in UAE and Saudi Arabia, which I think is a big number, right? To break in and have all those people playing and paying. They said not just sign up and play a free tournament, but playing and paying. I think that's a very impressive number if they can get there. And I hope what will come out of this is GamerJI will show, and I suspect why they want to make this move, is this average spend per user that they're going to get in a place like UAE or Saudi Arabia is going to be way higher than the average spend of a user in India. So even though they have 3 million users in India, my guess is spend is relatively low to what they're modeling out in UAE and MENA. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch, but I'm massively bullish on the region, obviously, and think this will be big for them. Harder Barbecue says, check out Super Gaming NPC and a game they're working on in this. Many Indian companies are moving to economic zones in the UAE for lesser tax and ease of doing business, not just gaming. This is true, Hardware Review, but not just Indian companies. A lot of companies in general, but especially in gaming. Gaming, metaverse, Web3, crypto. A lot of crypto companies opening offices in the UAE. I just want to touch. And Hardware Barbecue also said I had never heard of this in India before. Well, 3 million users. I mean, it's a big number. I want to touch on the last story quickly because there were a couple of comments. Wenji says it's the drama of a championship. It's like a marquee marketing expense to do a big Fortnite event. No, lots of eyeballs, big prize pool, equity, i.e. anyone can win, booga a kid. I mean, I agree completely with that, but this wasn't a marquee event, right? It's like $1 million thing that almost no one has talked about. There's been a few articles, but like I don't think it's going to get the kind of press of a $30 million Fortnite World Cup at, where was it in New York, where they play the tennis there? What's that called? I can't remember, but the big stadium.
Arthur
Ashe Stadium, right? Like that was a big marquee marketing expense, Wenji, and that I could have understood, but this I don't fully get what it's going to accomplish. Adam says, I'm all for events in the esports space. Honestly, as a spectator, not sure it makes business sense. But to Jeff's point, there has to be community building involved or some tie to revenue in-game after events. Adam, I think I fully agree on we want events as spectators just to enjoy. And I'm sure they've done the math, and there must be some reason they're doing it, whether it's marketing spend or some tie to revenue in-game. But they have so many resources to do something so much bigger I feel like if they really had religion behind it. All right, guys, we've got one last story two quick stories in our lightning round here. And the headline here is SHAQ thinks esports pros should be considered real athletes. So this is in a new interview. SHAQ suggests esports pros should be commended and thought of as athletes. He was interviewed by Jake Lucky. It was featured. He commends esports pros, and he goes on to talk about how on his TV show SHAQ Versus, he goes up against different sports stars to see if he could beat them, and mentions like racing or esports people using their heads and things like that. So in his mind, it has a stigma. Esports has a stigma of not being taxing on the body, but he thinks regardless they should be thought of as athletes in the exact same way. I know this is the argument as old as time in the esports space. So the take I want from you guys is, does SHAQ commenting on this make any difference whatsoever? Is SHAQ relevant enough today that this will change the hearts and minds of many people?
Well, SHAQ is definitely relevant. I mean, he's on a very popular pregame show for the NBA. So he's still out there. He's also a pitchman on like every single TV commercial ever. So I think SHAQ is popular. I do think people will see this though and realize he's kind of talking his own book, right? He owns an esports team. So it's maybe him just like pitching his own narrative. Having said that, it does still matter. It's better than him saying, "Oh, well, they're not athletes." But it's not like this is gonna like be the definitive nail in the coffin. Like, all right, the debate is over. It's solved.
Lindsay, how many how many major athletes like SHAQ do you think still believe the opposite? Like, what percentage do you think of huge celebrity athletes like SHAQ would take the opposite viewpoint here?
I really think it's still at least split, probably leaning more towards esports are not true athletes. But I will say, as always, that the NBA is perfect and that several of the players in the NBA, previous, past, and present, have shown a lot of interest in the gaming space. So at least within the basketball community, there's a lot of people who are talking about esports as a legitimate thing to participate in. And that gives me hope that someday the super traditional folks in the NFL will catch on in the US.
It is interesting, right? And he's a guy, I think, that has such mainstream appeal. His words matter maybe more than someone like, I don't follow basketball, but Shaq's a name I recognize. And then I think that matters because he reaches probably a broader audience. And so it's interesting for him to say that, and it's great for him to say that. Guys, I want to finish on the article I teased about the 10 most played console and PC games of the first quarter of this year. I think you guys had mentioned Elden Ring as one of them. I will just show you the title of the article. NPD's most played games list of Q1 doesn't include Elden Ring.
Ooh.
And so,
Oh no.
regardless of what's on that list, the take I want from you guys here is, because we'll get to the list in a second, but 30-second take I want is Elden Ring was all people were talking about. Almost every streamer I know streamed the game. Do we live in a little bit of an echo chamber where, like, what we see and what we hear is maybe not the actual reality, right? Like, the fact that Elden Ring didn't even crack the top 10, is it because we live in a bit of an echo chamber? Or do you think it's because these hardcore single-player games just don't have very wide appeal? Lindsay?
So part of it is what Hardware Barbecue said, which is what I was going to say, is it just hasn't been out for long enough. But I will say, as someone who is friends with a lot of gamers, this was a game that people bought. It's like it reminded me a lot of like when Epic gives away free games. It's like you have it in your library and you want to know that you can play it, but I didn't know a lot of people who stuck with it beyond the initial, like, I'm learning how to do it and it's really cool. And then it kind of fizzled from there and people went back to their old favorites. So I think that is sort of part of it. I have seen interest taper off pretty quickly. That being said, it could be a game that people kind of come back to when they have free time or something like that too. It's like a library game. Like, it sits on a shelf.
Well, I think it's
so you don't think it's the echo chamber?
No, I think people are still interested in it. They want to like look at it, not
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. These single player games do tend to like have big spikes, and then they do go out of favor because people finish them, and then maybe they'll come back if there's a DLC or something like that. But to what we were talking about earlier around Game Pass and kind of the first topic we talked about, like, I view that as good. Like, a lot of people loved Elden Ring. They may have played it for a couple weeks, a month, and then stopped playing it. Like, and that's fine. Like, I think that's good for the industry overall. In terms of the echo chamber thing, there is probably some element of that. I mean, like, clearly these content sites like the one, even GameSpot, it's like they need something to talk about. It can't just be, hey, like, a lot of people woke up and played FIFA again today. Like, there's nothing super interesting about that. So, they tend to highlight things that are new and different.
Look, it's funny because our Elden Ring TikToks, and by the way, we for those of you who don't know, all of our meta content, we have a TikTok called Metaverse TV. Everyone should go follow it. But like, the Elden Ring videos we put out on our Metaverse TV TikTok were like, did this 10 zillion views. Like, I mean, it was like people were consuming Elden Ring content, even never mind playing the game. It was surprising to me to see that it wasn't even in the top 10, considering how well the content did, right? I guess that this is the lens I was looking at it from. Like, oh my God, people wanted anything Elden Ring content. And yet, it wasn't in the top 10 most played. I will tell you, here's what was in the top 10 most played. Minecraft, and I love that they put the year. Minecraft, GTA, Sims, Fortnite, Among Us, Animal Crossing, Call of Duty, Madden, Call of Duty Warzone, Call of Duty Vanguard, and NBA 2K22. Not a single game that came out in 2022 was the most played game in 2022, just to be clear. And only 3 of the games came out in the year before, in 2021. Half the games weren't even in this decade. Half the games came out, 2009, 2013, 2014, 2017. And so longer conversation around, longevity of these games and the snackable nature, Jeff, that you said about certain games, but the most played seems to indicate that it's these titles that have, greater longevity, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the flash in the pan. Honorable, he says, to be fair, the stats are based on Q2 2022 survey. Sorry, Q1, you mean? Yeah, well, and Elden Ring came out February. I'm not sure, Honorable, that sounds right.
So it's only half the quarter. Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Hold on. Yeah, it's too early to tell. That's true. That is a good point. But the headline made for a good clickbaity headline because it caught my attention. So there you go. All right, guys, that wraps up this week's lightning round. I will say, guys, a couple of housekeeping points. First of all, thank you to everyone who showed up, participated. We really appreciate you guys. We got a great podcast coming out this week. Some great guests from KJK, which is a law firm / consulting. They do stuff with esports centers. There's a lot to look forward to on that podcast. Go subscribe to Meta Business and Meta Woman. The content coming out of these 2 shows, there's nothing like it out there. There really isn't. It's the best. So go subscribe to those 2 podcasts, Meta Business and Meta Woman. And make sure to follow us everywhere on every social channel that you can find Business of Esports. It's on TikTok, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on YouTube. Our YouTube has been growing great, finally. So really appreciate any love there. Go give YouGov some love. Click on the link if you haven't, yougov.com/BOE. Even if you already have, check in like daily or weekly because there's always new stuff going up there. I'll put it in the chat again, yougov.com/BOE. We appreciate all of you. Lindsay, thank you. Jeff, thank you. You guys are amazing. Don't forget, guys, the future is fun. We will see you all next week.